Our protagonist is this little mage called Caleb, and at the moment he clicked to put 10 points into wisdom and start the game, the monitor shone and everything disappeared. Wake up, you criminal bastard. Get a grip. The protagonist is confused. Huh? What is this guy talking about? I was at home playing just now. Wait, did I lie down and fall asleep? He's laughing, having fun, thinking it's a cool dream, while the guy tells him to stop laughing. He's on the ground. Then the man walks away, saying, well, you're going to die like an idiot soon anyway, so maybe madness is better. However, with pain in his back, the protagonist is confused. This really hurt for something that's supposed to be a dream. And damn, what is this crowd? And why does everything feel so vivid? The mustached man then says, everyone here has already received their wands, and for those of you who committed crimes and became slaves, this labyrinth is your last chance to change your lives. If you survive and leave alive, you can escape slavery with the money you earn in the labyrinth. So give it your best, because this is your only chance to become students at the University of Magic. Our poor guy is scared. Wait, University of Magic? What is this labyrinth thing? And why does this look a bit like that game? Before he can understand what's happening, a group is sent in and they're already inside the dungeon with a so-called fantastic quartet. Looking around, obviously he has no idea what's going on. At least he knows that his character is clearly Caleb, the one he created. And if this really is the labyrinth from that game, the creatures he's going to find here won't be easy to deal with. First, it would be good to analyze the situation and understand his own status and his teammates. But looking back, everyone seems not to care, acting like everything is fine. One guy's in shock, screaming like crazy, saying they're all going to die. Caleb realizes he clearly ended up with a bunch of lunatics. Some of them are crouching on the ground, hiding. He says, guys, let's calm down, for God's sake. If we want to survive, we need to look for a way out. But the fat guy already runs off desperately, screaming for help, begging to be taken out of there. Caleb knows that the worst thing right now is to draw the attention of the monsters around. And then the sound of flesh being pierced. The fat guy turned into a roasted pig on a skewer. A goblin is drooling over him, while another guy cries and raises his hand, saying that everything happened exactly as he expected. The blonde girl is about to say something when the guy next to her gets a spear straight through the head. Damn. The two unlucky ones are there in the back, staring while she falls to the ground, crying. Caleb notices that in just a second, only two of them are left, and the problem is that the goblins turn in their direction. At this rate, he won't be able to handle it. The creatures jump to strike his neck. The blade is about to reach him. He's sure he's going to die when, pling! The special ability of the Turn-Based Hourglass activates. Time stops for 60 seconds for one turn, and he has 4 actions activated automatically in emergency mode. He's staring at this, not understanding, when the system says it's his turn and the countdown begins. He sees it floating on the screen. He still doesn't get what happened when he suddenly notices the goblins frozen in midair. He's like, wait, time stopped? What is this turn thing? The blonde girl isn't moving either. Then Caleb realizes that this might be his ability. Looking at where the blade stopped, he understands that the first thing he has to do is raise his wand to block the attack that would hit his shoulder. As soon as he thinks about doing it, 1 action point is reduced. Now he only has 3 left, and he realizes it will be hard to defend and attack at the same time. As he sighs, he wonders if no one can move, why can he still breathe? He can still talk too, and those actions don't reduce his points. Then he remembers that in the game, there was a screen with an action sequence, and he slowly starts to make a plan. He spends another action to move his body, another to defend while aiming at the goblin on the right. Then he reaches the last one with 4 seconds left, and all points are used. He shouts, "Fireball!" at the same time the hourglass ends. He manages to block the goblin's attack with the collar while using the wand to aim at the left and right ones, creating a barrage that throws both of them away. The elf is standing there not understanding anything, while the corridor is completely destroyed. Caleb is in shock. He almost died. What the hell just happened? He doesn't want to die like those guys who went out without doing anything. He's not sure why this ability activated, but clearly things work just like in the game, and at least no one understands the mage class better than he does. The problem now is how long it's going to take for them to find the exit. He loots the little body while thinking that the most important thing now is to find new companions. Then he glances to the side, and the blonde girl gets startled. He asks what kind of talent she has, and she explains that it's some kind of lightning ability, but she has never used it. He thinks that's still better than having nothing at all. Then he says, well, even if you've never used it, you don't have a choice. If a monster comes at you, don't hesitate and use that thing. She replies, okay, I guess. I kind of don't even know how. He tells her they should go look for the exit gate, while he thinks that he doesn't know if it was a developer or some kind of god who threw him into this mess. But he's sure of one thing. He's going to survive this labyrinth. The next chapter says that some years ago, the labyrinth appeared along with portals, and monsters invaded the earth. Because of that, countless adventurers and mages died. In order to fight them, people started being trained, and throwing slaves into these labyrinths became one of the solutions. At least, that's what Caleb knows about the story. He has no idea if it's really true, so it's better to be careful. The traumatized blonde girl, who always has that scared look on her face, introduces herself as Irneal. He replies that his name is Caleb and starts walking, while she stays there trying to make conversation, saying that Caleb suddenly became calm and quiet. On the way to this place, during the transport, he talked a lot with everyone. That surprises him. That means there was another him before he took over this body, which is dangerous because they might discover that he's not the same person anymore. Irneal then tells him that she lived in the fairy forest, in what looked like a quest shop, but was actually a drug trafficking operation. Unfortunately, they set her up, and since she couldn't pay her debts, she became a slave. Caleb realizes she doesn't stop talking because she's scared, but then he suddenly stops her. Hey, Irneal, be quiet. The poor girl gets scared, but in reality she had just stepped on a trap. The hourglass activates and says it's his turn. 59 seconds. He thinks that he stepped on the trap, but as far as he saw, it was her. At least he knows he has to stay calm and keep an eye on the walls, because traps usually come from there. There are no holes on Irneal's side. He needs to check his side too, so he spends one action point to turn his head. No holes either. Another action point to look at the ceiling, and nothing. So it can only be a floor trap. It might be one of those spikes that come up and painfully pierce your foot. It could also be a nail bomb, and then they're both completely screwed. My god, it could even be a gas trap, but what kind of beginner dungeon is this? Lastly, it could be the classic pitfall trap, but he knows that when he looked down, Irneal was the one who activated it. That means whatever happens will affect both of them, so it can't be just a spike trap. Problem is that there are only 6 seconds left. 3. He realizes he doesn't have many options, so he uses his last action point to move his own foot onto the trap as well. Then the turn ends. Irneal trips like an idiot, gets all twisted, half falling, and turns to him asking why he did that. Okay, so obviously you stepped on the trap. Since it activates when I take my foot off, I stepped on it so it wouldn't trigger. She's still all confused. But now what? Sorry, but what do we do? He asks if she remembers the orcs they killed and tells her to bring something from them. She says okay and runs off. The idea was to place another object to keep the trap pressed. Wow, kid, you're pretty smart. I'm liking you. 200 IQ move. Or maybe not, because 30 minutes later, nothing. And he starts wondering if she stepped on another trap or ran into some monster. Honestly, it would have been better if he had just been selfish and run forward, letting her die alone. But in the middle of his drama, someone calls out from the end of the corridor. It's her, bringing a huge barrel, saying it was too heavy, that's why she took so long. Caleb thanks her and tells her to place it where he is now. He then pulls out his wand and steps a bit away from the barrel. He decides it's better to activate that trap so it will also trigger any others nearby. He moves the barrel, activating an explosion throughout the corridor, and that solves it. It really was a nail trap, and the spikes flew everywhere. Thankfully, he survived because of the hourglass. The place is dangerous, but he definitely has hope. With the hourglass, he can always take the initiative. But first, he needs to confirm if he can use this ability whenever he wants. Besides that, he also wants to make sure if he can cast spells using action points. Just then, a little green foot appears in front of him. He says this is the perfect moment. One of the goblins is holding a bow, and he starts casting a fireball. Apparently, they're already in the hourglass again because one action point is spent. He's about to throw the fireball when he realizes that casting any kind of magic always costs one action point. Man, he spent 2 points and created 2 fireballs. The turn ended, and apparently 2, 3, 4, who knows how many. The poor goblin got completely shredded without being able to do anything at all. That's right, man, totally broken. The blonde girl is in shock while he realizes something. He can cast 4 fireballs before the enemies can do anything. O'Neill comments, Caleb, you're a cheater. You have ultra-fast casting, no animation, no cast time, no magic circle, no nothing. Meanwhile, she's a poor girl who can barely use her useless little thunder. He doesn't care at all. He just keeps walking while she stays behind, crying, apologizing for being a useless burden. Honestly, thinking about it, an elf shouldn't have been chosen either as a warrior or a mage. Then he asks O'Neill, how many meters can you jump? She thinks for a moment and says that in the forest she could jump at least 4 meters. Damn, that's a huge jump. He already knows that 4 meters means at least 5 points in agility. Then he picks up the bow from the goblin that died and gives it to her. An elf with a bow is as classic as a dwarf with a hammer. She pulls the string and says that she's shot a few times in the forest and maybe she'll feel more comfortable like that. The greedy guy looks at her waist and says that from now on she'll stay in the background while he keeps her wand. In the end, the bastard is carrying 4 magic wands taken from everyone, but she's still smiling, happy about it. Then the pointy-eared girl suddenly listens carefully and warns him that someone is following them. The pro turns around, but in the back of the corridor, he doesn't see anything. He's about to say there's no one there, but she says she's sure she heard something coming from that direction. Then he remembers something from the game. He tells her to close her eyes and count how many stones are in front of him. She doesn't really understand, but says okay. She concentrates and says there are at least 3 stones 1 step away. At that moment, Caleb is sure. She has the sound map ability, just like in the game. It allows her to locate things only through sound. It's pretty obvious. So he asks how many people are coming, and she says 4 and they're running. Caleb knows that if they're running, it can't be good, but facing an entire team head-on would be the worst thing, so they run too. They pass by a random little lake and hide behind one of the pillars. Both of them are tense, waiting while they hear the footsteps slowly getting closer. Suddenly, Caleb jumps out in front of them. Everyone pulls out their wands, and he asks why they're following them. The guy behind the shield immediately tells him to move aside and hand over the little elf. Of course, they're standing on top of the lake while saying this. The guy points to his shield and says he got an item that can't be penetrated by any magic. Not even arrows would work on it, so it's better for Caleb to hand over the elf before they start a fight and he ends up dying for her. They would even give him a chance to join their team and survive easily. From their facial expressions, it's obvious what they want. A glass of water. The guy is thirsty after all. He wants the elf. The poor girl is in shock, thinking she's about to be sold. But Caleb doesn't think it would be safer with them than with her. At least with O'Neill, he can sleep peacefully. With these guys, the risk is way too high. Same story as that surviving as a barbarian thing, remember? That one had a blonde girl too. These cave elves always end up getting targeted. Caleb tells them to leave if they don't want to die. O'Neill smiles, relieved that she won't be betrayed. But the guy asks if he's really joking. The leader says he's serious and that they're the ones who are going to die. The guy changes his expression and says they have no choice, then tells his friend to kill him. But hold on, Caleb's hourglass activates. Everything freezes, and Caleb thinks that he clearly gave them a chance. He may look like an idiot holding 2 wands, but they're the ones who made the mistake of stopping in front of him. With the puddle of water under their feet, he can first use a lightning spell. In a normal situation, only 1 person would be hit, but since there are 3 of them in the water, things change, and the first action point is spent. The lightning starts, and immediately he spends another point. He knows that once they're electrocuted, their shields will fall, and that's when each one will take a fireball to the face. Another fireball is cast, then another one aimed at the bald guy. The last point is consumed. All his actions are used. His turn ends. And man, the poor guys blink, and now there are two fireballs and a lightning bolt shocking all of them through the water. They scream in pain, almost dropping their weapons. Before they can do anything, a huge explosion hits under their feet, smoke rising everywhere. And while they can't see anything, another fireball comes straight at them, hits them in the face, and explodes everything. Ah, look at that genius move. He raised the smoke because since she's an elf, even without seeing anything, she can still aim and land a perfect shot. Right away, he tells you to stay hidden and take advantage of the smoke. His magic was still on cooldown, so he needed her to at least take one of them down. The big guy took the fireball straight to the face, so at least he must have fallen. Some time passes. The guys are still screaming in pain, and the cooldown is at 2 seconds. Wow, that's not even that long. He tells her to keep shooting, but then she says that everyone is already dead. What? But you only shot 2 arrows. How did 3 guys die, considering only one got hit by the fireball? When the smoke clears, one of them has an arrow in his heart, and another one was hit in the neck. The arrow went through and pierced the throat of the other guy behind him. Damn, the girl is brutal. Not only is she fearless, she's also insanely accurate. Caleb is in shock. It was a triple kill with 2 arrows. He praises her, saying she really is an elf. The bald guy suddenly groans and wakes up, realizing that he no longer has a hand. Caleb finds it funny that he's still alive. The bald man wants to know what the hell Caleb is. How can someone cast so many spells without any enchantments? What kind of talent like that could even exist in a place like this? Honestly, even though he's not a good person, the bald guy has a point when he says this damn world is really unfair. He just went up against a mage who can stop time and cast 4 abilities at once. Caleb replies, "Unfair? Don't blame me, bastard. You're the one who came here and got yourself into this situation." The guy starts crying, saying that it's not like people choose to be here. He was exiled and enslaved because he had no magical talent. If he had even half of Caleb's talent, he wouldn't have to live like this. He's a terrible person and doesn't deserve pity, but he still has a point. Things really are unfair in this world. In the end, Yurnail apologizes, saying she tried to kill everyone, but this one guy somehow survived. Thinking about it, the only one who stayed alive was the one who took the fireball. Everyone she shot didn't even move. Caleb is more curious about whether this was really her first time killing someone in a fight. She has such an innocent face that he's starting to think she might be dangerous in other ways too, so he tells himself to be careful around her. She says yes, it's the first time she's ever shot someone. Caleb says it's also the first time he's used magic with the intention of killing someone, but it was to survive. He calms down and says we'll check what those guys were carrying. At the same time, he's trying to understand why he feels so calm after killing 4 people. If this were the real world, he would be losing his mind, but he feels strangely peaceful. Earlier, when the goblins attacked, he was absolutely sure he was going to die and felt much more afraid. Somehow, in this short time, he's already become mentally stronger. The only undeniable thing is that the mix of burned flesh and blood in the air is disgusting. He's staring at the scene when Yurnail brings a backpack and says they were carrying a lot of stuff. Inside, there's a small book, a pot, some bread, a knife, rope, and even a letter from someone named Abyssine, a Labyrinth master. Who knows? What they do know is that it's not someone they fought. It's probably another player who was abandoned and died in this place. It becomes clearer and clearer to Caleb that dying in this labyrinth is easier than it seems. Even that group seemed strangely well organized. They had a good formation, a tank in front, a mage in the back. If the situation had been reversed, there's no way he could have won. If he hadn't been for the hourglass, he would already be dead, that's for sure. And depending only on that power and on luck is not how he wants to live the rest of his life. His growth is pretty fast. He thought he would just keep abusing the hourglass, and he probably still will, but at least he wants to become a little more independent. He tells you now that from now on he needs an infallible strategy, one that doesn't depend on abilities or random variables, because his life is the most valuable thing he has, and he's realizing that this game doesn't feel like something he's going to wake up from. If this is his new reality, he has to do everything he can to survive. And so, they continue down the endless corridor. Truly endless. They've been walking non-stop for 12 hours. They've already fought several goblins, so it's natural that she's exhausted. The moment he suggests taking a break, she gets all excited and asks if they can finally rest for a bit. They light a campfire, sit on the ground, and take out some bread. And Yurnail calls out to Caleb and thanks him for saving her twice today. He replies that it was nothing special and that she did a lot of work too. She says she knows, but points out that, for example, he could have accepted the offer from those guys earlier and things would have been easier. He gives a fake humble smile and says, I would never abandon a reliable companion like you. She gets all emotional and touched, but he already lies down, waving goodbye and saying that he's going to rest first. Then the system announces that he has entered the resting state and leveled up to level 3. He's obviously confused. Wait, you only level up in this game when you sleep. With that, he can distribute 2 more points. He currently has 10 wisdom because of the equipment he has obtained and the points he invested earlier. He remembers that in the game, with 13 wisdom, you can break a goblin's shield, so he increases it from 12 to 14 by spending the 2 points. After that, he decides to check Inail's status too, since she also seems to have reached level 3. He opens her profile and sees that she already has 8 points in agility. He also checks her skills and confirms that she has Sound Map, which allows her to see using sound instead of sight. Then Caleb stands up and says, well, as expected, I did not return to reality. She's standing there awkwardly, and he tells her she can go sleep now. She jumps down, thanking him again, while he leans against the wall. He asks what she's going to do now. He explains that it's just a small test. He pulls out his wand and casts Fireball. The shield explodes, so his power really did increase. And the truth is, this probably isn't a dream. Inail says she's impressed that he destroyed the shield, but then she falls asleep. After a long time, the rest ends, and they're back in the corridors. She asks how long it will take for them to find the exit. Unfortunately, they keep running into intersections with 3 paths, which means it's now a matter of luck, and he's a very unlucky person. The scene moves forward, and he suddenly gets nervous. That's because they seem to have found the exit, and there's a group of people standing in front of it. He hesitates and tells Inail to stay behind him. Those people have good equipment and look like a more experienced group. Suddenly, a dwarf turns around and says, Hey, you there. What is it? The dwarf asks, when was the slave team thrown into the labyrinth? Caleb answers, yesterday at 10. The dwarf scratches his beard. So a day and a half. You survived pretty well, and even reached the exit this fast. Impressive. Then he looks at Inail. The elf realized she's useless with magic and picked up a bow. The poor girl gets startled, but he continues, and the human, on the other hand, is holding 2 wands. You seem overly confident in your magic. Caleb says yes. The dwarf says he likes that answer. Humility is meaningless. By any chance, do you have a fireball wand? Caleb replies again that he does. Then the dwarf asks a guy named Zickel what they should do. Zickel answers, I don't know, Dad. We can't stay here for long. If he's that confident, we should recruit him. But the dwarf says that's too much confidence. In the end, he's just a slave mage. We'll end up disappointed with someone anyway. Zickel agrees. So who do we choose? There's no other option. Considering Abyssin's level, we're going to be disappointed either way. When he hears that name, Caleb remembers the letter he found earlier. It was from that person. So he asks, did you lose a companion who was a mage? The dwarf says yes. We lost him to a black wasp on the 1st floor. He was a friend I liked a lot, even though his decisions in that fight were questionable, and now he's dead. Then the priestess tells him to be quiet. She had used a preservation spell, so he isn't dead. He could be revived if they brought a resurrection scroll. While they're discussing this, Caleb finally understands something for sure. On the other side of that door is the exit he desperately needs to pass through, but apparently a mage is required. It's probably not for a normal enemy. With their team, they could easily handle trolls, salamanders, or other common creatures. The only situation where a mage is absolutely necessary is against a flying boss. But if that were the case, they would be more interested in Inail and her bow. There's only one type of boss where they definitely need a mage, and specifically one with fireball. So, Caleb asks, is the boss behind that door a venomous spider? I like it when the protagonist uses logic like this. The trio is completely shocked, wondering how he knows that. The dwarf tells him to explain how he knows and what he understands about the labyrinth. Caleb replies that he knows a little. He explains that the venomous spider is a boss with deadly poison. It does typical spider things, like shooting webs and entrapping its targets. The problem is, it's extremely fast. Normally, the doors close, and once you're caught in the web, you get completely stuck and can't move. It is almost inevitable that a group that gets trapped ends up dying. The only way to counter this boss is with good old fire magic. By setting the ceiling on fire, you can basically eliminate most of its webs. That is the basic strategy. Then the protagonist says, to defeat this boss, you need me. Alma shouts that she agrees, and Zickel also says, well, it seems the kid understood quickly, so he's the right choice. The little dwarf smiles and says, all right then, you two will temporarily be part of our group. But Caleb says no, and they all look confused. Irnil says, what? Caleb, why are you refusing? We need to get out of here. So he explains, this does look like a good opportunity to kill the boss, and we'll finally be able to leave this place. But there's something very important that you didn't tell us. The number of people who can pass through this gate is 4. Alma's expression changes immediately, and she says, the gate is very unstable right now, and only one person can pass at a time. When someone goes through, the destruction process accelerates. It goes from blue to green, then yellow, then red, and finally disappears. In the end, the limit is 4. There's only one free spot in that group, and Caleb is the necessary piece in this situation. In other words, what they're really asking is for Irnil to be abandoned. The dwarf is not surprised. He says, I'm impressed you even noticed that, Caleb. I didn't want to hide it, so I apologize. Honestly, it would be perfect if we could take both of you, but what we really need is a mage. So I want to give you one last chance to leave this place alive. You just help us, and the elf stays behind. At that moment, Irnil starts trembling, thinking she is about to be abandoned. But if there is one thing we've learned, it's that a protagonist never abandons an elf. Caleb thinks for a moment. This offer is so good that it almost seems like the right solution. But even if I escape from here, if I don't escape from slavery, I'll just be thrown into another labyrinth again. The most important question is, will these guys form a party with me after we leave? Obviously not. Considering how much stronger they are, I'll just be abandoned and thrown back with the slaves in the end. Not to mention that he might not be lucky enough to end up with someone as capable as Irnil again. So he says, Irnil, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to abandon you. Everyone is shocked. Irnil, with her ears drooping, doesn't even understand what's happening. Then Caleb makes a suggestion. What about hiring us instead? They all pause. Hiring you? What are you talking about? You don't want to compete for the gate. You want payment? So tell us, how much do you want? Caleb answers, 10,000 gold. That's clearly a huge amount, because Irnil is in shock. But Caleb knows the value of things. Everything they collected in the last day in the labyrinth would be worth about 2,000 gold. Adding both of them together, he estimates that he and Irnil are worth around 6,000. Looking at that group, he notices they hired a priestess, which is extremely expensive. That means they not only have enough money, but they must have farmed a lot. They are even more desperate to escape because they want to resurrect their friend Abyssin. Preservation magic doesn't last forever, so they are in a hurry. From the back, Zickel says, well, there's not much we can do. There's no other mage, so it has to be this kid. Caleb, however, only agrees if the priestess makes a binding contract. Alma says that's fine. She will make an unbreakable pact. But the dwarf offers 9,000. The negotiation goes back and forth. 9,500, 9,300, 9,500. The dwarf complains that it's impossible. How is he supposed to sleep at night after paying 9,500 gold for a slave mage? Caleb says he won't regret it, while the dwarf already knows he definitely will. Alma tells him to stop being stubborn because we need to leave this place quickly. Everyone gathers in front of the door and Alma begins the ritual. Together with the dwarf Bertarnen, Zickel, and herself, they hire Caleb's group, including Irnil, for 9,500 gold. The condition is that Bertarnen's group must successfully pass through the gate. If any group dies, the contract is void. They both swear the oath and the door opens. It's time to enter the spider's lair. Inside, Caleb notices that the place is darker than he expected. He also notices some neutral objects in the room, explosive barrels. Bertarnen warns them to be careful with the piles of web on the floor. He tells Caleb to start burning the webs before the boss begins attacking. But before Caleb can even act, a web attack comes from above his head, almost hitting his face. He reacts quickly and redirects it. Bertarnen shouts at Caleb to cast a fireball upward and burn everything. When Caleb looks at the ceiling, he sees the boss hanging above them all. Even though the boss attacked first, now it is exposed. He knows he won't have many chances, so while this monster is attacking, he has to deal as much damage as possible. With that, the old hourglass activates. Fireball, 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 and fireball, man. Quadra-cast rolling. All points are reset, and there come 3 fireballs surrounding the boss in the sky. Poor spider, right, man? It doesn't even have anywhere to run. The explosion happens up there. The group is kind of confused, trying to understand, wait, is it just me, or wasn't there any enchantment and 4 fireballs appeared out of nowhere? But Sen tells them to wake up and focus because the opportunity has arrived. With the experience he has with this boss, they can't miss the chance to deal maximum damage at the start. He calls Palnuk and fires an arrow, 2 arrows while the boss is falling. 3, 4, 5. My god, she pulled off the combo. 3 hits on the helmet. Then he tells her to wait a second, realizing that her goblin bow is useless against this boss. The monster falls to the ground, spitting fire everywhere. He immediately asks Ima for a shield spell, and she says it's fine. He orders Zyka to charge the moment the spider starts moving. The guy is angry, telling the damn beginner not to boss him around. But right then, the spider gets up, and he ends up obeying and charging forward. The monster goes for 2 slashes. He faces it, activates an ambush jump, and cuts off the 2 front legs. The creature agonizes and falls with its huge body facing everyone. Burton says it's going to explode and tells Ima to obey the boy. Constellation shield raised, and Caleb realizes that at least the dwarf knows this creature's patterns. The problem is that the most important thing here is finding a way to stop the venomous spider explosion. Then he pulls out another wand and uses a piercing ice attack that goes straight into its belly, starting to freeze it. He then tells Ima to drop the shield and for Burton to charge. They don't really understand, but he shouts, telling the bastard to start dealing some damage. Burton doesn't even want to argue, saying that this is the moment to use the shield, but the protagonist orders him to go and obey. For God's sake, he thinks, in the game this is so much easier. Damn it, just click. Burton finally jumps, saying he doesn't understand why this kid is trying to command everything, but fine. He leaps high. In midair, he delivers a perfect vertical strike to the creature's head. Smoke everywhere, axe covered in poison, and everyone celebrating. Meanwhile, Caleb is standing there hesitant. Apparently, these guys don't even know that when the venomous spider dies, there's a chance to activate a second phase. The group is all commenting on the victory. For a first-floor boss, it was easier than they expected. Annie asks, "Hey, Airhead, why are you standing there with that wand pointing at the ceiling? Are you crazy?" He tells her to look up, and when she does, her expression changes. The others ask what they're screaming about, and then everyone's expression changes too. There was an endless mass of eggs on the ceiling. Everyone is in shock, and Rima says nobody said there would be a phase 2. Burton isn't even scared. He says it's the first time he's been through this too. Then the protagonist calls Pelnuk and tells her to roll that barrel out. She goes to the little corner and throws it to him. He immediately tells Burton to go up again. He doesn't understand, but Caleb just tells him to obey. He tells Ima to place a light weapon on Urinal's flash. Everyone seems to be following orders now. She casts the spell, and Urinal shoots an arrow toward the ceiling, hitting the middle of the massive eggs. Arbit says she can see perfectly now and throws the barrel up as well. When the barrel reaches the highest point, Caleb activates the hourglass. Fireball, and it looks like it's going to be another one of those sequences, and it is. 4 fireballs toward the ceiling. Everything explodes in the cave once again. Now the team is completely confused. Wait, silent casting with high-speed activation, using 4 spells at the same time? This is way too strange. Talent starts thinking, this kid has something weird about him. He's a slave, but this talent is completely abnormal. Where did this kid come from? And with that, the portal opens. Caleb sighs in relief, saying, finally, it's over. He thinks it really is much easier when you have an experienced team. It's just frustrating because, unlike the game, I control very few things. Suddenly, Zykel makes a serious face and asks the boy who he really is. All curious, they want to know who this kid is who can cast so many things at once. You're incredible. The protagonist says it was nothing, but they insist, saying they owe him one. Arbiton admits, man, I'm impressed. That's not the kind of ability a slave should have. What were you doing in your world before coming here? Caleb remembers he was just a nerd who spent all day playing games. At first, he says he was never anything more than a slave, nothing special. The dwarf replies, well, I get it. Not everyone wants to reveal their own story. Annie says she just didn't imagine they'd win without taking any damage. Britannia agrees, saying he only accepted the proposal because he thought the two of them would die really quickly. Caleb responds that it was exactly because he imagined they would think that way that he gave that price. The dwarf says he's smart, but this still isn't over. Caleb agrees, and Zykel finds it strange. What else has to happen? The gate is right here in front of everyone. Hey, Pro, explain. He answers, we have to finalize this contract in the village. Annie says it became a strange situation since the contract states that they have to go through the portal for it to be finished. Until then, it's technically not complete. Anhiel finds this unfair and says, what? The gate is right there. Isn't it just a matter of crossing and that's it? Annie explains that, unfortunately, any contract made with the goddess of justice has to be completed exactly as it was written. In other words, Nu and Caleb had to pass through the gate. Ah, now I understand the little contract he made. I'm still a bit confused, though. Let's see what's going to happen. Nu asks, and what if they can't get through? Annie replies, then the contract will be considered a failure. The entire team might be killed, and the contract will be void. She's a bit stunned as she realizes no one brings 10,000 gold into a dungeon. The rule was designed in a way to screw over anyone who can't make it out alive. Her friend asks, Caleb, did you know about these rules? He says that every contract only ends when you leave the dungeon. Zykel then claps his hands and says, now it's perfectly explained why that cheapskate Burton didn't even accept a deal like this. Then he adds, hey, kid, you're way too talented to die here like this. You better get out of this place alive and steal everything Ani has. Apparently they're going to leave before the others, but the protagonist and Ermil need to leave together, so they might have to find another exit. I think that's it. Before they leave, the protagonist goes up to them and says that this backpack belonged to their companion. Bertan is shocked and runs over, asking if he's talking about Absin. He takes it and asks, where's his body? The protagonist says he didn't even see the body. They got it after fighting another group. Now everyone understands what happened and thinks it really was quite a coincidence. Bertan immediately says, I'm sure you want something if you're giving me this backpack. Caleb replies that all he wants is the backpack itself. They can keep any item that belonged to the guy who died. Well, that's not strange. That's too little. But if that's the case, it's fine. They take Absin's things and give them some food. Caleb asks if they're going back into the dungeon soon. They say not for now. They really need to go back to the city and buy another scroll. They had already brought another scroll, but Absin had died and been resurrected. Caleb thinks that guy should give up going to the dungeon. He's just trouble. Britannia says that anyway, Caleb was 1,000,000 times better than Absin. They should have recruited him from the beginning. While they're praising Caleb, poor Ermil is standing there with her ears down, looking sad, like she's useless. Here comes the drama. Why don't you take Caleb with you? Everyone is shocked, because in theory that would mean she would die. The protagonist is confused, and she explains, if one person arrives with you at the village, it already counts. That way, no team will be deleted, and all of you will get out alive. Caleb keeps 9,500, becomes a free citizen, and joins your group. Amma, of course, asks what she's supposed to do. It's already hard to survive in Seb's home. Imagine if she stays alone. She won't last a day there. But Ermil replies that she doesn't even think they'll be able to find the exit again. At the pace things are going, they'll die there anyway. That's why she asks Caleb, please not to think about her and just leave. She would have died a long time ago and will never forget him. Actually, she will. You die and you don't remember anything, my girl. The world is cruel. Bert, feeling awkward, tells the elf that she has to understand that recruiting people from another team inside a dungeon is considered kind of rude. I'm kind of confused about this ring, damn it. He says it like he doesn't really want to, but then he turns to the protagonist and says he wants to recruit him as an official member. Wait, if Caleb accepts, he'll officially hire both of them to receive 25% of the profits, plus the 9,500. The protagonist is just trying to understand how everyone is going to get out of there. Even he thinks the offer is strangely generous. Then Neil tells him it's fine, she'll manage to survive. He can't die there just because of her. When she says she wants to end this with a smile, a new mission appears. Opportunity for Hourglass expansion. If you stay by Neil's side now, her trust will reach 100%. As if he's going to abandon those drooping ears, right? And the system explains that when a person's trust is above 80%, he can give commands to that person during his turn, and after the turn ends, the person goes back to controlling themselves. So basically, he can kind of organize everyone there at the same time. That's when he realizes it's just like a game. You level up and unlock new abilities. And obviously, this thing about being able to give commands to team members is completely broken, especially considering that Inu would obey everything. What are you thinking, man? Oh, okay. He comes to the conclusion that it wouldn't work with extreme things, like telling someone not to breathe for 2 hours. He can probably only give basic commands, like aim here, shoot that target, or jump back. It would probably also cost an action point. But on the other hand, he could control a lot more things during a fight. Bert is telling him to answer already. What is he going to choose? The protagonist wants to think a bit more, so he activates roulette to think, wondering which of the two choices would lead to a better result. He doesn't know what this will cause in his future, so he has to be careful. In one option, he has the hourglass and an archer. In the other, he can instantly escape the dungeon and join a group of veterans. To be honest, I think the best option is the first one, even though I also think he's going to end up paying a high price for it. He does the obvious thing. He grabs her arm and says he appreciates the offer, but the answer is the same. He wants to escape this dungeon together with her, so they can cross now, just the two of them, as planned. That look on Luna and Tunis's faces doesn't lie. Something is wrong. The other team is shocked and asks, "Is he serious?" Caleb says yes, he's dead serious. He thinks that even though this is a risky option, it's the best decision, and it's what he would choose if this were a long-term game. Evolving more will bring more profit. Besides, he's not cold enough to just abandon her there. She keeps asking, wanting to know why he won't go, while he just thinks it would be too hard to live with the guilt. Suddenly, Zekel calls out again, first with an angry face, then getting emotional, saying that Caleb is the coolest guy he's ever met among amateurs and beginners. He's incredible. Nobody understands anything, and Patan says he wants Caleb even more now. Then someone says he doesn't want to break the group's emotional connection, but how does he plan to deal with the boss of the next gate? The protagonist answers with a question, asking if he can take the spider's corpse with him. Immediately, they refuse, saying no way. Feelings are one thing, money is another. Caleb says he wants to buy it, and reduces 1,500 from the 9,500 debt. Britannia says his name is pretty new. She realizes the idiot still doesn't even know her name. Britannia praises her, saying she's a very sincere girl, and that she's willing to sacrifice herself for Caleb. That was even cooler than the quadruple fireball casting. That's why he hopes both of them come back alive. With that, he gives them some potions and says it's a little gift so they can survive. Musical apologizes, saying he doesn't have anything to give, but when they get out, they'll have a drink together. Amma says as soon as they leave, they should go to Nathaniel's temple and look for Priestess Amma. She'll be waiting there with their reward. She casts a blessing of Nathaniel and says she'll ask God to guarantee their lives. The protagonist knows this blessing is a good one and costs a lot of mana, but it increases all stats by 1 for 12 hours, and also grants immunity to some curses and decay. Finally, the time comes, and they stand in front of the portal, waving goodbye and telling them to remember them. 2 people pass through, and the portal turns yellow. Huberton takes out a mana stone, which in dungeons makes portals reappear faster, so it's kind of like being nice. Now the portal turns red, and he says that when they pass through, they should go to the Adventurers Guild and look for him, Bertonin, a name they shouldn't forget. The portal closes, and Ermil falls to the ground, still asking why he did that. How are the two of them alone going to face the next boss? Even though he was prepared, he notices that for her, it was still too much. But she doesn't need to worry because his body has been marinated in years of addiction to this game. He's already calculated everything about how they're going to get out of there. Then he tells her to stop crying and rip the spider's legs. Finally, her trust reaches 100%, and now he can give direct commands. The sound of flesh tearing echoes through the corridors, and Ermil says she's not saying this because she doesn't want to work, but she's willing to even die for him. So why doesn't he help, and why is she the only one collecting the spider's parts? Caleb says, "Trust me, Red Girl, keep ripping it apart. I have my reasons." He doesn't want to explain, but the truth is that because she has more dexterity than him, the chances of things going right are higher when she does it. Not to mention that he also wants to improve this expansion ability even more. He has to start planning future battles with that in mind. At the end of the skill description, it now says, difficult actions or commands that go against her nature will not be executed. He doesn't know if he can, for example, tell her to kick her friends, or if he can tell her to spin around and throw flash everywhere. He needs to quickly figure out what limits he can place on her, especially since right now she's all happy saying she finally pulled out all the teeth. The protagonist says, "Perfect. Now we just need to start making some poisoned arrows." Erniel is all happy, saying she didn't know she had so much talent for pulling out teeth. Damn, she's in love, my friend. He says that 1 second ago she was crying, but now seeing her smile, this is how he prefers it. Come on, just confess already, man. Chapter 7, and the guy already looks like he wants to propose. Then he explains. They're going to combine goblin arrows with the venomous teeth to create poisoned arrows. Erniel says she understands the logic, but she won't really be able to help much in the fight, so what's the point? He explains that she doesn't get it. The reason she can't help much is because her bow is really bad. For her class, the weapon and the arrows you use are the most important thing. Since they won't be able to get a good bow in this dungeon, they'll have to get better arrows. By combining the right materials, they can create this special arrow. And with a dangerous poison like that, even a mediocre bow becomes lethal. The annoying part is that it's kind of random to successfully craft this type of item. It's a combination that can fail. But suddenly, she asks if it's supposed to be combined like that. He looks at her and says, "Wait, how did you do that?" She says, "I just pressed the arrow on the tooth and it worked." He thinks she has a strange proficiency for crafting items, but perfect. Now that she has the poisoned arrows, all she has to do is save them for now. She's only supposed to use them when he tells her to. It's time to go back to walking through the labyrinth. So they move through the corridors. When he decides to test the hourglass expansion, he activates the ability. 60 seconds, like always, and the 4 action points appear. He tells Erniel to give him a bottle of water from her backpack. Strangely, he doesn't lose any action points. Then he realizes it might be because he isn't the one actually doing it. As soon as the ability ends, she goes to the bag, grabs the bottle, and he asks why she's suddenly handing it to him. A little confused, she answers that he looked like he was thirsty. Caleb smiles. It seems her mind creates some kind of justification for performing the action, but he'll need to understand how this works in combat. The perfect opportunity appears, with 2 goblins at the end of the corridor. He spends 1 action point to cast a fireball and orders her to shoot an arrow at the leg of the goblin in the back. The turn ends. The fireball hits first, and the arrow strikes the goblin's thigh. The little goblin falls to the ground, and Caleb finishes it off with a scorched blast from his wand. Then he asks, "Erniel, why did you decide to shoot the leg instead of the head?" She replies that from the position it was in, the leg seemed like an easier target. He realizes that she always invents some excuse and still obeys perfectly. This really will be the perfect trump card for situations where he can't save himself, or for things that only a woman can do. He remembers that she can't do anything that goes against her personality. Damn, now I'm scared of this Caleb. He decides to test how it works. He tells her to do a bee-bong dance, which seems to be some kind of Korean dance. Obviously, she doesn't do anything and just looks confused. Then he tests again and orders her to do any kind of dance. She takes a step forward and starts doing some weird dance. The protagonist stares at her and she realizes she's doing something ridiculous. He walks away, thinking, well, at least it worked. They keep moving through the corridors, and all the time this guy wants to keep activating this magic. Damn it, stop with this controlling hourglass already, kid. But no, he's unstoppable. He activates it again, and tells her to say everything she knows about him before they entered the dungeon. Naturally, she starts talking. She says that now she remembers, back on the boat, he was talking about the reason he became a slave. It seems he killed someone. Caleb chokes and asks who he killed. She says she doesn't know exactly, but she imagined he would be much scarier. Thankfully, he's just a normal person. She's sure he must have had his reasons. He says yes, he had many reasons, while thinking that now he's screwed. Apparently, there's someone out there in the world who probably doesn't like him very much. She keeps giving more information, saying that it seems he killed someone from the fox race. Caleb remembers that foxes in this game are extremely intelligent, strong in magic, and attractive enough to charm anyone. Oh, that's you, man. Don't try to throw that preference in there to justify yourself. She continues, saying that she's sure that woman must have done something terrible for him to kill her. He just turns around and walks away, saying that too much has happened. But man, now she won't stop talking. For God's sake, activate the trigger and tell her to be quiet. She comments, "So before coming here, before you became a slave, you were an explorer, right? In some city in the east? As far as I know, in every group of slaves, they always place one person with experience. You must have been that person in your group." The protagonist is starting to understand a little bit about his past and why he ended up in this specific body. Just then, when they turn the corner, they stop and run straight into the exit gate. He's surprised. He expected to find the exit, but this fast is way too lucky. Ernil is standing off to the side and says she found someone, and by the looks of it, it's Abyssin, unconscious. Apparently, he still has the soul preservation spell active, so he just looks like he's sleeping. Judging by his face, clothes, and hair, they're sure he was from a rich family. Caleb says yes, that kind of magic is extremely expensive, while they are just ordinary slaves. Ernil is impressed. She's never seen that kind of resurrection magic in front of her. Then Caleb comments that maybe if they take the body back, the family might give a good reward. The only problem is that one of his legs is missing. Then he asks, "Do you hear any creature that sounds like it's chewing?" He activates his drooping ears and immediately says he senses some noise. He asks about wings flapping. She says no, there are no wings. Caleb gets confused. If it were the black wasp, like she said, she should be hearing wings flapping. He says they're going to have to check the room where that sound is coming from. She goes ahead and says they don't even have to go very far. They find a black wasp egg. The protagonist looks around. A single egg like this is strange. If adventurers had really fought here, there should be some marks on the walls, but there's nothing. Just one egg in the middle of the room, and something doesn't feel right. Suddenly, his expression changes, and he asks if there's been a case where adventurers were being ambushed in this labyrinth. Neil stops to think and says there was some story about a backstabber, a guy who supposedly killed the Black Wasp alone while his entire team died. She asks why he's curious about that, and Caleb already knows. One of the biggest problems has appeared for him, a thief, which is the hardest class for a mage to deal with. Then he asks if she's ever heard of a possessed adventurer. She thinks and says no. He realizes that it really is something rare even in this world. Even he, who had cleared these ruins in the game many times, had only seen a few cases of possessed adventurers. Basically, they are people whose souls were taken by the dungeon masters and now serve the dungeon. They have a permanent negative status called madness. The problem is that they can still use all their old abilities, but now they're even stronger. Now it was clear why they had found the exit so easily. Emile asks if they're screwed, and he realizes he's scaring her. This was the worst possible scenario, even though he himself was also worried. He tells her to stay calm because she has him with her, so there's no danger. Next chapter. They're at a bar, and Bertan is saying he's telling the truth. Man, come on, you're telling me you found a guy who cast 4 spells at once without saying a single word? That would be the genius of the century or something never seen before. Bertanen says that if he doesn't want to believe it, then don't believe it, but he's telling the truth. The guy at the bar says, "All right, fine. When this legendary friend of yours shows up, come back here." Then he slams his beer mug on the table. Bertan says he didn't even order yet, and the bartender mocks him, saying it's just like his friend. Oh yeah, silent casting. Ane gets angry and drinks, wanting to punch that bastard. Sometime later, the bartender asks, "And what about Zickel? How is he?" Bertanen says he wasn't that bad. His experience is okay, and his skills are decent. The other guy says it's obvious he's good. He's the one who introduced that experienced person. He's going to become the next backstabber, the name of that famous guy who was apparently the possessed one. Bertanen says, for God's sake, the backstabber is one of the most famous of all. Poor Zickel can't compare to a guy who carried 2 people alone to the 2nd floor. It's just a shame that someone with that kind of talent was captured by the dungeon master. While he's lamenting, suddenly someone appears at the door calling for Bertanen. It's a worried mother. "Where is my son, Abisan? Is it true that my boy died?" Bertan turns around. Yes, it's true. Unfortunately, he went alone to look for the exit and was bitten by the black wasp, so I think that's it." The woman is shocked and asks if he's telling the truth. The poor woman faints, saying she asked them to take care of him. How could he die like this on a mission? The brother speaks and tells the mother to calm down. He still has the soul preservation spell active. Then he looks to the side and says, "Bertanen, listen, I know Abisan's death isn't your fault." And I also know that the Bhavanam family wouldn't be stupid enough to let this end like this. You already had a rescue plan, didn't you? Bertan replies, relax, the soul preservation spell lasts for a week, so it'll be easy to resurrect him. The scroll will arrive in 2 or 3 days, and right after that, we'll go after him. So they're really going to have to hunt down the body inside the dungeon. Damn. The guy asks how, and Bertan shows that he has one of Abisan's items, so they can just use lost item tracking magic. Patinado asks how he got that, but Bertan doesn't say that a certain genius mage found it. The guy gets curious, and the man behind the bar says, yeah, that genius mage, the slave who casts 4 spells in 1 second without saying a single word. This crazy dwarf here believes that person exists. Apparently, nobody believes it. The guy is already thinking, for God's sake, why would a slave with that level of talent even exist? And he tells Bertanen to at least stop with these stupid jokes. The mother tells Clarence to look at it from another angle. If there really is a genius mage, maybe he can help recover the body. Bertanen says that's possible. His group had 2 people. But Clarence turns around and says, come on, a group with a slave and 2 people on that floor? There's clearly no chance they can save him. Let's just put up a reward for whoever brings back the corpse. While he's saying that, a guy with shining eyes immediately stands up and asks how much they're going to pay. He's one of the counterattackers, a group that operates on the 3rd floor, not clumsy like Bertanen's idiot group. Clarence glares at him and tells him to shut up. The guy freezes, then runs back to his group. If you're such a badass, go in there yourself and save your brother, old man. Clarence tries to solve things with money in this situation, only attracts weird people. The mother still asks, so how are we going to solve this? Clarence answers, the kid will obey me. I'll go there myself with the Bertanen group. Someone comments, if the 5th floor mage goes with us, it'll be easy. Clarence replies that of course he's going. He's going to bring his brother back. And besides, he's curious to know who this so-called genius mage is. Poor Caleb. He hasn't even left the labyrinth yet, and he's already being hunted. Damn annoying dwarf. Stop talking about him to everyone. Back with the famous Instagram boy, he talks to Ernil. Ernil asks what he's talking about. He says, I know we have to wait for the dwarf's group, but as long as we have this larva that will die of hunger in about 2 days, we're safe. That's because she's the child of the floor boss, so any other monster that smells her runs away immediately. The bad part is the second she dies, everyone will notice and start moving. She asks, shouldn't we go straight to the next exit? But he says it's impossible. If that so-called backstabber is really out there killing everyone, it's impossible for us. The best plan, in Caleb's mind, is for the 2 of them to find that guy and ambush him. It'll be hard, even though they're not weak. Ernil feels insecure and asks if they really have any chance of beating someone considered one of the best. He says yes, there is a way, even though it will be very difficult. Excited, she says that no matter what it is, she'll give it her all. He says that's fine, but the strategy will be pretty harsh. Sometime later, explosions are happening. Goblins everywhere in shock, electrocuted, shot in the head. Caleb says that from now on, they're going to go through hellish training. The first goal is to kill at least 100 goblins, so they rush in. Arrows, fireballs, lightning, the creatures getting completely destroyed. An unfair formation against first-floor monsters that have no chance at all. Since level 5 is the limit on this floor, and they reached level 4 after killing the boss, they just need to farm until max level. That's because level 5 has the potential to unlock another skill. On top of that, they'll collect as many magic stones as possible. Ernil says now they're going to hunt the goblin shaman, the only creature on this floor that drops scrolls. And the kid doesn't stop. He wants to farm non-stop. It's already night, and the poor girl is exhausted on the ground. Caleb, however, is happy that all the preparations are done. Ernil says she's starting to feel like that larva, getting weaker and weaker. He admits that yes, her situation is also dangerous because she'll die soon since she hasn't eaten in 2 days. She says they could let the larva eat Abisan's body so it would last longer. He replies that would be insane. Letting a preserved body be eaten like that would be one of the biggest crimes. Besides, they already got all the items they needed. Erneil looks at the orc barrel of water. That must be part of his plan. He says yes, everything is almost ready. Now we're going to rest because soon we're going to cause some chaos. He lies down and says he's going to sleep first. She comes closer and asks, why does he always sleep first? There must be some reason.